And so the fact that God called you has more to do with him than it does with you. And so never disqualify yourself when you understand that you've been called by God. Never disqualify yourself when you understand that God has given you an office and an assignment to fulfill.
Hello, this is Pastor Gaskin, and welcome to Into the Sermon. On this past Sunday, I spoke a message entitled, I Am on Assignment. And we talked about the fact that God calls us from the very foundations of the world, and that when he calls us, we are not to shrink under that call. Jeremiah said, I'm a child, I can't speak. Gideon said, I'm the least of my family and household. And Moses said, I can't speak. But whenever God calls us, with that call is his provision and his plan to get us through whatever obstacles we will face, even our own limitations. And so I want to encourage you to listen to that sermon. It is a sermon that will empower, encourage you, and build up your confidence and capacity to believe God's plan for your own lives. Now, we had a few questions that came from the sermon. And the first question that we have here is, can the calling of God's plan or purpose on your life change? And how do you embrace that change? And so I believe God calls us, and in various seasons, he may shift that call to do something. For example, a pastor may be called to a local pastorate in its local, a pastor may be called to a local ministry to start, but then that pastor may also be called to be an advisor to other pastors as that ministry progresses and as they get older in age. And so, yes, there can be a shift. And I believe the way we embrace the shift is to stay connected to God. Stay connected to God in prayer. Stay connected to God in our worship. And as we do that, God will make his desires our desires, and we can align and flow with that. The second question that came was, what can we do not to shrink or to resist the urge to shrink? Because we are in the flesh, our natural responses will be to operate as though we are in the flesh. And that means to get frightened, to become timid, maybe hesitant. But I believe that we begin to renew our minds by staying and abiding in the word of God. Psalms 1 tells us to meditate in his law day and night, and we become like a tree planted by the rivers of water. And so as long as we understand that the enemy would have us to function in the flesh, and therefore we have to be intentional about operating in God's promise. If we do that, that will encourage us, and that will cause us to resist the urge to shrink underneath the weight of God's call. And lastly, I'll say this. When we embrace the call of God on our lives, what's marvelous and wonderful is that God will give us his power and the grace to embrace it and to knock through any barriers that comes along. He gives power to the faint, and those that have no might, he will increase strength. He'll give us to mount up with wings as eagles, to run and not to get weary, and to walk and faint not. Again, this is Pastor Gaskin of Living Waters Christian Center. I hope you enjoyed this brief moment of Into the Sermon, but we want to encourage you to check us out on YouTube, Facebook, on our church website, livingwatersphila.org, and view the sermon. The Lord will bless you, and you will be encouraged through it. I am on assignment. God bless you.